You're listening to the Story By podcast. This show features short fiction with two things in common. First, I wanted to share them. Second, the rights to option or produce them for other media are available. My name is Lewayne L. White. I'll be the host and narrator. Welcome back to the Story By podcast. Today's episode continues our Halloween run with Luchadores de los Muertos. Enrique is managing one of the premier underground fighters around, his little brother Rio. If Rio wins his match, Enrique is looking at big money. If Rio loses, he's dead. Again. Luchadores de los Muertos by Lewayne L. White. "Okay, Rio," I told him, grabbing his bare shoulders and staring into his eyes. "This is the big time, man. Total package, money, fame, women." Rio nodded his masked head and said, "You beat this guy, we're fucking rich." Rio nodded his head and said, "Okay, I'll be rich, but what you need with money? You're dead. Now go out there and fuck him up." Rio nodded his head and said, I rose, turned toward the ref and nodded, then got the hell out of the auction corral we used as a ring. As soon as they hit the bell, a guy the size of a Mack truck was going to try and kill my brother. Well, technically, he can't kill Rio. Rio and his opponent, El Toro, are both already dead. Or undead, I'm not sure what the right word is. Rio and El Toro lumbered toward each other, both groaning. Even if they didn't have the muzzles, they wouldn't talk no better. They slammed into each other, grabbed hold, each trying to lift the other off his feet. That's how they get you. They take you down and start chewing. If you're lucky, they fuck you up enough to kill you permanently. If not, you get up and join Club Dead. Rio got loose enough to loop an arm around El Toro's neck. He threw on a stranglehold and I smiled. His brain may be gone, but he still remembered that hold. I used to put the hurt on him with that all the time. Then he got bigger, and I learned firsthand that hold's a motherfucker. El Toro struggled, hands clawing at Rio's arms. The crowd roared and chanted, "Rio! Rio! Rio!" Rio recognized his name and looked up at the crowd. El Toro elbowed Rio in the gut and folded him some. The crowd booed. After wriggling loose, El Toro punched Rio in the face, but most of it landed on Rio's muzzle. El Toro crushed a few fingers with the punch. They dangled limply when he swung his arm at Rio again. It looked like a sissy bitch slap, but El Toro's got some push behind it. Rio's head rocked sideways and he stumbled back. El Toro growled behind his muzzle and lunged for Rio. When he crashed against my brother, the two snapped the top boards of the corral, and Rio practically folded in half backwards. "No!" I screamed and reached for the top of the corral to climb into the ring. Killian's hand caught my shoulder. "Don't!" Rio lashed out with both fists on top of El Toro's shoulders, driving the giant to the ground. "See?" Killian said. "I know my fighters. Your brother's been unbeatable." I stepped back down from the corral rails and watched. Rio's hand continued hammering El Toro, driving him further down. El Toro lunged forward, drove his head into Rio's gut. If Rio had been alive, it would have knocked the wind out of him, maybe ruptured something, but not now. With a muffled roar, Rio reached down, looped his arms beneath El Toro's throat. He clasped his hands together and jerked up. Even over the crowd noise, I heard the grinding crack of El Toro's neck breaking. Rio kept jerking up harder and harder, even though his opponent would be unable to fight. Like regular people, once the messages stopped going from the brain to the rest of the body stopped working. With humans, they're paralyzed or dead. For these guys, it just meant that nothing but the head worked. The hearts and lungs stopped shortly after they drank the reddish water from the reservoir. They died, rose again a few days later, started wandering around. Father Rivera had field day with that. He's not sure what the hell's going on, but he's sure it's the end times. You can practically hear the capital letters every time he says it. Rivera disapproved of the zombie fighting league. He had no problem betting on the cocks, dogs, whatever else I could find. Somehow he thinks there's something wrong with this. Rio cranked up harder, making El Toro's arms flop and dance. El Toro's feet swirled around in the dirt, raising some dust. Even with the muzzle on and all the people screaming Rio's name, I heard him howl. It was a low, whiny sound like a dog that's just gotten kicked again. Then it changed to a roar, and he cranked one last time, and tore El Toro's head completely off. The crowd leapt to its feet, roaring, "Rio! Rio! Rio!" "That dead motherfucker's gonna make me rich," Killian said, slapped me on the shoulder. "Fucking rich." I shook off Killian's hand and climbed into the corral. El Toro's body lay at Rio's feet. El Toro's head rested in Rio's hands. Rio held it like a kid holds a ball. He looked at it, rotated it so the face was pointed his direction. Then he roared. It was a loud, fierce, king of the jungle roar, and I paused midway across the ring. Rio roared again and the crowd quieted. On the third roar, Rio ripped the muzzle off El Toro's face. Then he peeled off the luchador mask, flung the fabric away, and looked at the revealed features. "What the fuck is he doing?" Killian said. "I've never seen him do that before." I waved at Killian to shut up and started walking toward Rio, quietly saying his name. "Rio," I said in an almost sing-song. The type of voice I used when we were kids and he was hiding under the porch, afraid of the big kids. "Rio, it's okay, buddy." Rio roared at El Toro's face again, but the sound faded back to that whimpering dog noise. "Rio?" He looked over at me. I saw tears leaking from his eyes. "Are you okay, Rio?" I said. But I was thinking, Holy Mary, Mother God, he can't be crying. He can't bleed, he can't pee, he don't shit or eat or drink. How can he fucking cry? Rio blinked at me, then held El Toro's head toward me. He grunted. "Okay, buddy," I said, hands raised in that everything's okay, don't kill me gesture. Rio said. And I realized he turned El Toro's head so I could see the face. "Shit," I said. Rio replied. "What the fuck's the problem?" Killian hissed. I realized the audience had gone dead. Ha fucking ha. Quiet. No one said a damn word. "Mi primo," I said to Killian. "What?" "My cousin." "You have a zombie cousin too?" Killian said. "Shit, I could have made a team." I shook my head. I didn't know. I stood near enough to touch El Toro's, Luis's, head. "Shit," I whispered. "You too." I looked at Rio, back to Luis, then over toward Killian. "Deal's off," I said. "You can keep the money." Killian shook his head. "I don't fucking think so, Pancho. We got a deal, and I'm collecting my merchandise." "Rio," I said to the thing that used to be my little retarded brother. "Run." Rio cocked his head like a dog, and I screamed, "Run!" But Killian's men were on us, fast as flies on shit. Before I could move, a group of thugs had me pinned to the ground. Rio dropped Luis's head, roared behind his muzzle, and lunged. At least 2 guys got ripped in half before they subdued him. He got the full King Kong treatment, including gigantic chains, swarm of guys with clubs, everything else they could throw at him. It cost 6 or 8 guys their lives, and a couple more would probably never walk again, but they got him down and into a cage. A fucking iron cage, like an animal. He'd never had to be in a cage. Even after he died, woke up crazier and dumber than before, he'd listen to me. Rio stood, grabbed the bars, and howled as he started to actually bend them. "Rio!" Killian roared. "Sit down and shut the fuck up, or I blow his head off." He shoved a gun into my temple and ground it for emphasis. "Shut up and sit the fuck down." Rio howled once more, then released the bars. But he didn't sit down. I sat in a chair in Killian's office, one ice pack to the swollen side of my face, the other resting in my lap. One of Killian's guys must have thought a kick in the nuts would help me see things their way. "Look, Enrique," Killian said, "I feel bad about the ass-kicking. Really, I do." I snorted. "But we had a deal. Your brother wins that match, I buy him. He won the match." I shifted the ice packs, trying to figure out my next move. "While we're talking about that match, what was that Yorick shit?" I blinked my good eye. "Yorick?" Killian extended his hand as if holding a small object. "Alas, poor Yorick. Rio looked like he was doing Shakespeare, talking to a skull." I shrugged. "He ever do that before?" "He never killed one of our cousins before." "Enrique, your cousin was dead already," Killian said. "His little shithole village must have had that red algae shit in their water supply, too." Killian pulled a bottle from his desk. "That's why I drink booze. Tastes better and the alcohol kills the germs." He uncorked the bottle, took a swig, and wiped his mouth with his arm. "Now what?" I asked. "You honor our deal," Killian said, then took another swig. "I give you a shitload of money, and you give me the dead meat sack that used to be your brother. Then I do my own underground zombie fights and make a bigger shitload of money." "Deal's off," I said. Killian shook his head. "I gotta have the boys kick you around some more?" I changed my mind. Tough shit. "No, he's not." "What, not a thing? Not something I can just sell?" "I'll tell you what he's not," Killian said. "He's not a fucking person. He's a walking corpse." I started to say something else, but he cut me off by slamming his bottle down on his desk. Even before he died, you were bitching about what a burden he was. Why didn't you have to take care of your retarded fucking brother? Killian rubbed his eyes, made exaggerated sobbing sounds, said, "Oh, boo-hoo. If it wasn't for that idiot, I'd have a life. Boo-hoo. Life sucks. Rio's a pain in the ass. Boo-hoo-hoo." Shut the fuck up. Killian slapped his hands to the desk and stood up. "No, Enrique, you shut the fuck up. You take your money, you get the fuck out of here. If I hear another word about this, I'll kill you and feed you to your fucking brother." Killian stabbed a button on his desk phone, said, "Show Enrique out." A few seconds later, a trio of his buddies appeared in the office. A short, thick-necked thug said, "Get up or I'll kick you in the nuts again." "That was you?" He smiled, said, "Yep, sunshine, it was." I stood, then kicked his balls into his throat. The little thug collapsed, screaming. The other two grabbed me and dragged me over the back of the chair. One of them raised a blackjack to smack me when Killian said, "Enough with the tough guy shit, just drag his ass out." Perry needed a kick in the balls anyway. Killian's posse dragged me out to my rusted POS and tossed me into the back seat. The biggest guy, Archie, dropped into the seat beside me and stuck a gun in my ribs. "I gotta shoot you." I shook my head. "I'm cool." Archie tucked the pistol away, pounded the front seat headrest, said, "Let's go then. It's hot in this piece of shit." "AC's busted," I said. "No shit." The guy in the driver's seat, who looked a little like an armadillo, put the car in gear and roared away from Killian's auction services. I glanced out the back window and saw another car pull out after us. "That must be your ride back." Archie looked at me over mirrored aviator glasses, said, "Duh, like we want to sit around that 10-sided box you live in." "Hey, that Airstream's a classic." Archie scowled, said, "I gotta shoot you?" I sighed and sat back for the trip home. I lay in my recliner, ice pack on my face and balls, beer in my hand, and several more already in my gut. The phone rang, and I nearly dropped my beer. "What?" I snapped into the phone. "Tell me you didn't," said the silky voice of Ava Lopez. "Tell me you didn't sell Rio to Killian." "I didn't sell him to Killian," I mumbled. "Good," she said. "He kicked me out without paying me." Eva slammed down her phone. I threw mine across the room. Then I must have nodded off, because the next thing I knew she was pounding on my door, screaming, "You selfish bastard! Open this door!" "Not by the hair of my chinny chin-chin," I said, and giggled. "Unless you're gonna blow—" The door popped in, and 5'3" of dark-haired, dark-skinned beauty stood scowling and shouting, "You son of a bitch! How could you do that to your brother?" "Buenos dias, senorita," I mumbled and giggled again. Ava stomped across my ratty carpet, slapped me on the side of the face that hadn't already gotten smashed in. "I cannot believe I ever loved a man who would sell his own flesh and blood." I tumbled out of the chair to avoid another slap. "He got no blood," I said, "and his flesh is probably already rotting." This got me a kick, then another. "Ow, stop it, damn it!" She kicked me once more, then sat down on the other chair and started crying. Oh, hell. I struggled to my knees and put an arm around Ava's shoulders. When she didn't hit me, I pulled her closer to me. "Shh," I mumbled. "It'll be okay." She shook as she cried, and the movement began to make me nauseous. I swallowed and said, "Rio, he wanted to go." Ava pulled away from me. "Bastard, don't lie." "He did. We talked about it." "Really? What did he say?" "Huh?" She slapped me again, but not as hard. "What?" I said. "You can live in Hacienda or this trailer. What would you pick?" "That's not the point," she said. I staggered to my feet. "It is the point. All my life I've been taking care of Rio. Mommy died, I take care of Rio. I quit school to take care of Rio. Get the crap kicked out of me to protect Rio. I give you up because I don't want you to have to take care of Rio. Now he's dead, and I still gotta take care of Rio." I lost my balance and fell to the floor. "I can't take care of Rio no more. I can't." "So what, you give him away like an unwanted baby?" Ava stood over me and yelled, "Why didn't you just kill him again? Get it over with. He's still mi hermano." Ava screamed at me. "No, he's a pile of dead shit, Enrique. Isn't that what you told yourself?" "Stop it," I yelled, trying to rise. "No," Ava yelled back. "Not until you get it through that thick head." She poked at the top of my aching skull, "that you're going to get him back." My skull was going to explode. Between the beer, the early morning sunlight shooting through the window, and the phone ringing, my head was definitely going to fucking explode. I heard, "Answer it," from beside me, and realized Ava and I were in bed. Unfortunately, we wasn't naked. "What?" I mumbled into the receiver. "Your fucking zombies tearing up my place!" Killian screamed in my ear. "Get down here or I'll put a fucking bullet between his eyes!" "I'll be there in a minute," I said, and slammed down the phone. Staggering out of bed, I nearly fell over. Ava looked at me. "What's going on?" I started to reply, but when I looked at her, my tongue caught. I mumbled, You're beautiful." She raised her eyebrows and said, "Whatever. What's going on?" Rio, I guess he's tearing up Killian's. I gotta go. As I spun to search for my car keys, I nearly fell over again. Fucking hangover, I said as I put my hand on the bed to steady myself. Ava's hand rested on mine. Let me take you. You're in no condition to drive. Rio was definitely tearing up Killian's place. Several bodies, dead and undead, lay scattered around the corral. Rio's muzzle had been ripped off, explaining bites and tears in some of the bodies. Hopefully Killian had his boys shoot the bite victims in the head, otherwise he might end up with more zombies than he needed. Killian stood on the top bleachers, rifle in one hand, cell phone in the other, screaming instructions to the few men stupid enough to remain in the ring trying to capture Rio. When he saw me and Ava run in, Killian yelled, "You do something about him, or so help me, he's dead again." "I just sold him to you," I yelled with false bravado. "He's your problem now." Killian swung his rifle and sighted on Ava. "Then I'll kill her if you don't fix this little problem." A couple of Killian's goons grabbed Ava and dragged her away from me. "Get going, Enrique, or I start shooting." I climbed up on the corral rail so Rio could see me. Then I called his name a couple of times. "Rio, Rio." After the third or fourth, he responded. Rio stopped with a thug in midair, ready to slam him to the ground. When he realized I was calling him, his head swung slowly toward me. His eyes caught mine, and I said, "Put the dude down." Rio looked at the goon dangling from his hands, then grunted and tossed the man casually at the corral wall. With a wet crunch, the goon crashed into the wooden rail, then fell limply to the dirt floor. Rio turned toward me and said, "Ugh." I raised my hands. "I know, buddy, you're mad." "Ugh." Rio stomped toward me, and I figured I was dead. He snatched me over the rail and pulled me against him. Broken back, I thought. He'll break my back and leave me paralyzed. "Ugh." Rio said, hugging me, not killing me. I patted his shoulder. "Love you too, buddy. Put me down?" He set me on the ground, and I said, "You have to listen to Mr. Killian, Rio." "You have to," I said. "He's your owner. He's taking care of you now." I heard several guns clicking, ready to go. "Rio, please!" "Enrique," Killian said. "Rio," I said, "please, do things like Mr. Killian says. You fight just like you did for me." Is this about Luis?" He said. A tear leaked slowly from his eye. "Oh, shit." I said, "Please, you don't fight and he'll kill Ava." Rio's head jerked up and found Killian in the bleachers. Ava sat beside him with a gun pointed at her gut. Rio roared and stepped toward the corral wall. "He takes another step and they're both dead," Killian said. "You got that, Enrique?" I grabbed Rio's arm. It felt cool, even in the morning heat. It also felt hard, solid, not like the doughy flesh of my little brother. "Rio," I said, "are you really still in there?" Rio swung his head to look at me. His eyes met mine, and I saw the little boy I'd protected all my life. The boy whose body grew into a huge man, but whose mind had stayed behind. Then what little mind he had got eaten up by the red algae. Or did it? "Rio," I said, "will you do what Mr. Killian says?" Rio's head shifted slowly from side to side. Shit. I turned to face Killian, said, "I think killing Luis, it spooked him. I don't think he can fight." "He sure could kill a bunch of my men," Killian roared. "They attacked him," I said. "If he won't fight, he's no use to me," Killian said, and pointed his rifle toward Rio. "No!" I said, turning to shove Rio out of the way. Killian was a lousy shot. To kill Rio, he'd have to hit his brain. But his first round went through Rio's chest. Since I was standing in front of Rio, it punched through my shoulder, and I fell to the ground, clutching a bloody hole. Rio roared and lunged over me toward Killian, who shot him again. And again. Rio moved faster than a walking corpse should be able to. Between that and Ava screaming and fighting Killian, it took 6 shots before Rio's head exploded. By that point, he'd gotten halfway up the bleachers, and they couldn't miss. The high-powered round took the top of Rio's head off and threw him backward. His headless body tumbled down the bleachers and crashed against the base of the corral. Ava screamed Rio's name and started to run down the steps toward him. Killian shot her. The force of the shot launched her through the air. Her headless body landed on top of the corral rail, then slipped off and landed on Rio's remains. I remember getting taken out to the desert along with Ava and Rio and dumped. I also sort of remembered staggering through a cold night to a highway where a couple tourists found me and called for an ambulance. Then I woke up in a hospital 3 days later. My shoulder wound was bandaged and ached like a son of a bitch. The doctor told me I had an infection. I was lucky I wasn't dead or walking around undead. I had a hunting accident. At least that was my story. Got drunk, went out shooting rattlers, woke up with a gunshot wound. Don't buy it? Neither did she, but I split before the cops got involved. I also managed to grab some pain pills, antibiotics, and a couple syringes on the way out the door. I hitched back to my trailer and found it burnt to the ground. I got a lift to Ava's and found it was toast too. Finally, I talked a buddy into lending me his car, and I took a ride out into the desert a little ways. I found a small pond that I knew the government hadn't sanitized yet. I filled the syringes with the gummy reddish water, and I capped them. Now all I needed was a liquor store. Killian's favorite booze comes in a bottle with a cork, and I think he deserves a special present. Thanks for hanging out today. Hope you liked the story. If you did, tell your friends. And if you didn't, tell me. Story by Podcast can be found via email at storybypodcast@gmail.com, on Facebook at facebook.com/storybypodcast, on Twitter at storybypodcast, and on iTunes. Today's episode included music provided by Kevin MacLeod, Incompetech.com, and edited by Lewayne L. White, licensed under a Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next week.